Hey everyone, and welcome back to Sports Design School. Now we've got another awesome video today where we'll be breaking down this Appalachian State design. It's one that I really enjoyed. It caught my eye while scrolling through Skull Sparks, and I think it's something that would be really fun to break down. So we're going to be walking you through how to recreate this design from scratch in Adobe Photoshop. So let's dive in. Now, before I get into the video itself, I do want to put a quick plug. If you're familiar with our channel and kind of the stuff that we put out on this channel, you know that every now and again we do these videos called Editing Your Designs, where I will take a look at your design, whatever it is, and I will make small tweaks to it to try and improve and enhance it, or maybe just add my own stylistic elements to it. Now, I've gotten tons of DMs on Instagram about, hey, will you edit this design or whatever. I'm excited to announce that I've finally put together just a separate email for that and completely to make it easier for me to sort through. So if you're interested in having your design featured in our Editing Your Design series, just email the PSD to hello@sportsdesignschool.com. That's hello@sportsdesignschool.com. And again, just send that over and I will randomly pick a few of you here and again, every now and again, to work on our Editing Your Designs series. But with that announced, now let's get back into the video. So here you can see we have this awesome App State design. For those wondering what the pixels and stuff is, you can go up here and we can see it is 6.4 inches by 8 inches or 1920 by 2400, which is a good standard document size that I love to use when designing stuff like this. And again, when I start off breaking down a design that I've already kind of walked through, I always kind of look at the basic parts of our design to understand what order we need to tackle things. So here you can see we have a back cutout, a front cutout, and then we have some different layers and shapes and stuff, and some text along with this trophy right here. So it's pretty simple, and I'm just going to attack these one at a time. But what I want to do first, actually, is address this kind of white line down the middle. And that's pretty easy to do. So to start off, I'm just going to set up a solid color and hit OK. And I'm just going to choose one of these shades of yellow, and boom, we have our background. Very simple, just like that. Cool. Now I'm going to create a new layer and hit P on my keyboard to bring up the pen tool. And along these lines, we're just going to click just like this. So I'll show you. So we're going to click here, down to here. We're then going to click roughly about here. We really want this to match up nicely. That looks good. And then we're just going to bring this around like that. Just clicking, boom. And once we're done with that, we can go up here and hit shape on our top left bar. And we have the basic shape of our design so far. Simple enough. Spoiler alert, this is my pre-design that I did just to make sure I could walk through and do everything. So we'll reference that here in a second, but you'll see. Cool. So we have this yellow background and this white kind of diagonal overlay on top, just like this design. Now another thing you'll notice is they have this cutout in the background like this, and for my cutout, I couldn't find any App State football players, so I found this cutout of this Western Kentucky, or maybe it's just West Kentucky. One of those, one of their football players, and so I just used that for my cutout. Simple enough. So I'm just gonna drag that below my white diagonal layer, just like they had it on their design, as you can see. And just like that, we have our beginning of our design. Cool. Now I know the next thing we talked about was this front cutout being a big part, but I'm just gonna hold off on that for now. I'd love to kind of tackle the top half of this image, and then we'll move on to the bottom half and kind of do it in that order. So behind our cutout, you can see we have a couple of different circles. So we have this kind of dark gray, almost black circle. And then we have a just gold circle with a drop shadow on top. And then we have this circle of stars right here, just going around our image. And so to do that, we can just simply go over to our shape tool and hit our ellipse tool and just click and drag to make our first circle and hold shift to make sure our circle is perfect. And that looks pretty good. And in terms of sizing, that looks like it's actually pretty spot on. And we'll move this behind our player, just like that. Now for our circle, it looks like we need that dark gray color, so we can just double click on our layer thumbnail and then just choose this shade of dark gray. And let's see how we're looking. Yep, pretty good. Now another thing while we're here is you'll notice there's a little bit of a light white gradient or maybe light gray gradient on top. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do this on the circle. We can do that by double clicking on our layer, going to gradient overlay, and then here I just have a custom gradient from white to transparent set up. And here we can play around with the scale and things like that to really hone in on what our gradient wants to look like. And you can see that's looking very similar to the kind of gradient they had here. I might turn it down a little bit for the scale. I actually turn it up. It's kind of working in reverse. And yeah, that's looking pretty good. Very similar to kind of what they did for their design. Cool, so now we have that circle. And then we're gonna now create the outside circle that the stars are kind of contained in. To do that, I'm just gonna duplicate this layer so we can just click on our layer, hold Alt, and drag down. And there we have the ability to duplicate that layer. I'm gonna turn off our gradient overlay, and I'm just gonna hit Command T to scale that up. I'm then just gonna click and drag right here on the top bar until we get to the size that we are looking for. Simple enough. Now that's looking pretty good. And just like we did with our other shape, we can sit here and turn this off and then double click and just choose the color straight from our original design. So you can see here, we have already made pretty good progress in terms of our overall design. Pretty simple to do so far. But you notice our yellow circle really doesn't stand out from our background in general. It's the same color. So what we can do here is actually just double click and add a drop shadow. And for my settings right here, I just have my distance set to 28, my spread set to 0, and my size set to 73. And for my opacity, I just have it at 48%. And I think that looks pretty good for our design. I think it matches pretty closely to what they do. Theirs might be a little bit more subtle, so I might turn my opacity down just a bit. And I like the way that looks so far. So now you can see we have our back part of our design, and we really have basically 95% of the top half of this design done. The one thing that we are missing are these stars right here. This kind of circle of stars. And there are a couple of ways you could go about sourcing this for your own design. So you could go through and just Google circle of stars PNG on Google or something like that and see if you could find a good high quality PNG. The other option might be going through on Photoshop and using the custom shape tool and then creating stars and then going through and rotating and whatever that may be. For my personal preference, I just do this in Adobe Illustrator, and I'll show you kind of why I do what I do. So Adobe Illustrator is a great tool for working with shapes and like vector images and vector assets. And if that sounds way too complicated, don't worry about it. But here we are in Adobe Illustrator. You can see if this is your first time in Illustrator, it's pretty similar setup to Photoshop. And I'm just gonna use my star tool, and I can just simply click just like that and create a star. Now if I hold Alt, I can kind of create a different kind of star. You'll notice the difference. So if I create a normal star, well, just kidding. I guess I'm stuck with these kind of stars now. So anyways, so we have this kind of star right here. Now I think this looks pretty good. I'm just going to flip my colors, turn my stroke down on my properties. And so here we have just a black star just like that. And we want to go over and make sure that our star is going to match what we did for this design. So it looks like these stars are basically just in a circle, rotating around just like that. So in Illustrator, I can go here, click on my star, and then hit R to bring up my rotate tool. I can then go kind of directly below my star, just like that. And I can click, and then click and hold Alt. And it'll bring up this dialog box right here. Now I can enter any angle I want to, so let's just say 30 degrees. And I'm going to click and then unclick my preview box, and you can see it has created another star 30 degrees in rotation from this middle point that we had just created. I'm then just going to hit copy, and you can see that just creates a duplicate of my star. And then if I keep on hitting Command D, it just creates a circle of stars just like that. Now, the reason I chose 30 degrees is it's pretty simple. If you're working with a circle, everything is going to be 360 degrees. So you need something that's divisible within that. So for instance, if you divide 360 by 30, you get a nice number of stars versus trying to do something weird where it doesn't necessarily line up. So you can see here, everything is equally spaced out, which is important for our design. Then it's as simple as just copying all of these and hitting Command C. And hopping back over to Photoshop where we can hit Command V and paste that as a smart object. And you can see we have our stars. And we can line them up just how we want to. And it looks like my spacing might have been just a tad off in terms of how much space I created between the stars, but we will just see how that goes. So I'm going to just drop that in there. And then get rid of this for now. So we want to position these stars around our circle, just like that. And that looks pretty good to me. Now, of course, you can sit here and play around with it all day and get it to line up just like these stars, but I think our stars look close enough. I'm then just going to double click and just do a color overlay just to make sure that our stars match the color of theirs. So we have a little bit of a lighter gray color. So let's take a look at where we are so far. And as you can see, we're making really great progress with this design. Really, if you look at it, the only parts we are missing are the bottom half. So here we have this cutout, the trophy, the text, the logo, and a couple other small elements. So let's dive into the bottom half of this design. So to start off, we have our cutout. Now this can be any cutout you want. For sake of keeping the West Carolina or Western Carolina theme, I just used this cutout image right here, and I applied a simple camera raw filter to that, literally just bringing up my exposure and my contrast just a bit to make the image feel a little bit better. It was kind of dark when I originally got the image. Cool. So now we have our cutout right here in the middle, and we have our white background. And so I want to start off by creating a new layer, and we're going to start off by just building in the shadows for our cutout. We really want to make it feel like he's interacting with our background. And when you just bring in a cutout just like this, you can see when the feet connect with the floor, it doesn't look very realistic. So we're going to go in and add some shadows to really enhance that effect. Now, the way I'm doing this is I'm just going up to my soft round brush like this, and I have my brush size set to 166. And I'm just going to take this right here and just pinch it down. And what that allows me to do is just flatten out my brush just like that to have really awesome, realistic looking shadows. So with my brush pinched down maybe just a little bit more, I'm able to go in. Oh, and also quick note, my flow is up to 25%. So what that means is if I paint just like this, you can see the more and more I overlap, the more dark my brush gets. And that's what that flow at 25% does. It gives you more control over just how dark the brush gets on overlaps. So I'm just gonna click, kind of like that. And actually, I think I like my process with this is to start off with a bigger shadow. Kind of like that. I just like to get the just broad shadow in general, and then I like to go back in and add some details. So we have just a big shadow kind of like that. And then I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm just going to layer or name that one layer shadow 1. And on this new layer, I can go back in with a smaller brush. I think we had it at 166. And then I can just add in these small details around where his feet are planted on the ground to really bring in some nice realistic looking shadows. And I think that's a pretty good job of bringing shadows into our scene. I think that looks pretty good. And so let's turn this off and see where we're at. So we have our cutout in the middle, and it looks like our cutout is a bit shorter than the one they used, but no worries at all. Next we have this Zach Thomas Davey O'Brien text, and I'm just going to start off by hitting T on my keyboard to bring up my text tool. I'm just going to type Zach, enter Thomas, just to have my text on 2 separate lines. And I'm going to bring up my font size until we can get it to where we kind of want it. And I think for the font, I'm going to use this font called Ginger Pro. Now this font isn't exactly like what they use, but I like the way this font kind of looks within this design. It gives it a similar look. So I have this Ginger Pro text, and you might be thinking, what are you talking about? This looks nothing like that. You'll see in a second. So what I'm going to do is flip my paragraph over to where it lines up on the right, just like that. And then if you look at this text, it looks like it's a bit stretched out. And so we can do this by just going over to our character dialog box and just clicking and dragging out on our text to really mirror that stretched out text effect. And that is looking pretty close. Cool. And while we're at it, I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate this text by holding Alt and dragging up. This one I'm going to flip around and have it face this way. We want to line it up. And for this text, I'm just going to type Davey O'Brien. Cool. So now we have our 2 texts right here, and we can drag those kind of into position. I might shrink the font just a tad, and I think that looks pretty good. I'm also going to just click and choose this yellow color for our text color. Now for the rectangles in the background, this is pretty easy to do. All we're going to do is just go over to our rectangle tool, and then just click and drag in roughly the same shape. Just like that. I'm then just going to double click and choose this kind of dark gray color. And we might have to move this around to configure it how we want it. I'm then going to duplicate this rectangle and just drag it straight down, and then hit Command T, hold Shift, and drag over. Now the reason I'm holding Shift is it allows me to edit my shape without scaling out the other parts of the shape. So for instance, if I were to just hit Command T, not hold Shift, you can see it scales up everything. And that's not what we want. So we're going to just hold Shift and drag just like that. And so now if we bring this back, you can see our Zach Thomas text is looking pretty good. If anything, I might shrink this top part just a bit. And I like the way that looks. Now we can do the same thing on this other side. I'm just going to hold Alt and duplicate. And we can position it a bit where we want to. Just make sure everything is lined up. And again, duplicate, drag up, and make sure the tops are matching. Hit Command T, hold Shift, and just kind of position this the way we would like to. And same with the bottom part. And I think this looks pretty good so far. So let's just double check where we are. So we have successfully created the Zach Thomas text and the Davey O'Brien text. Now the next thing we need to do is add in this award given to the nation's best quarterback, and that's pretty simple to do. We can just hit T on our keyboard, turn on all caps, caps lock, and type in award given to the nation's best quarterback. Cool. I'm then going to shrink this font down as much as I can to match the way they had for their original design. And I'm going to go ahead and change my font to BW Modelica and black, because I think it kind of matches the typeface that they used for their design. That's looking pretty close. In size, and I'm gonna again, oh, it looks like our font width is still on 110%. We just want that on 100. And that makes it fit a little bit better. Now we can go and just choose this dark gray color. And just like that, award given to the nation's best quarterback. Awesome. And then for this watch list text, I'm just going to do something similar. I'm going to type in with all caps, actually just watch list. Cool. And I'm not sure what font they used for this watch list text. I'm just going to use this font called must have right here. And it doesn't look identical, but I think it looks similar enough. And I'm just going to move it and position it. Turn my font size down. And again, this doesn't have to be perfect, but just roughly in the same position. And we want our font color to match our yellow. Now it looks like, just based off of what they did, it looks like our text is a little bit thinner. So I'm just going to double click, add some stroke, set it to 4, and then choose this yellow color right here. And there we have our watch list text. It looks pretty similar to what they did. I'm pretty impressed with the way that turned out. Let's turn everything else back on. So Davey O'Brien, Zach Thomas. Cool. Now it looks like our watch list and our award given kind of clipped the other parts of our design, so we're just going to move these down a bit. That's very natural. Sometimes when you're working with different fonts and things don't necessarily match up exactly, but we can always just kind of position it to where it's close enough. Cool. So now we have that so far with our design. Let's turn off our white rectangle and see kind of where we're at. So now we have Zach Thomas, Davey O'Brien, award given to the nation's best quarterback, watch list. And now we're just missing a few more quick elements. We're missing this trophy right here, the App State tape logo, and then this here in the bottom right and bottom left. So this trophy I already have done, and I'm just gonna go in and find that from my layers. It's here somewhere. I didn't layer these, or I didn't name these layers, which is my fault. And actually a little shortcut. If you go here, oh, it looks like I turned that off. Cool, yep, so we found it. So I'm gonna drag my trophy into my document. Again, for this, it's nothing special. I really just I Googled Davey O'Brien trophy image, and I found this, and then I did a cutout of the image. I'm just gonna name this trophy so I know what I'm working with. Now I can do the shadows underneath. We're gonna do something similar that we did last time and just brush around the edge of our trophy. And there we go. We are. Cool, so it looks like we're lining up pretty well so far. Now we just need to add in our app state logo right here and this tape overlay. And that's pretty simple to do. We can do that by just typing in app state logo, dragging in our PNG straight from Google. And I'm just gonna title this app state logo. Again, I'm also gonna convert this into a smart object so I'm able to scale it and move it around as much as I'd like to. I'm then gonna position it just wherever I want, kind of like this to match up. And it'll probably have to rearrange because our text is a little bit different in sizing. But that looks pretty good. Now I did notice they have a little bit of a subtle drop shadow on theirs. So I'm gonna turn down the size because we want a really nice defined sticker drop shadow. Cool. And I'm gonna drag this below our text. And so we have our app state logo popping up just like that. And like I said, I might position it right there just to better fit what we have going on here. And in terms of our tape overlay, that's actually pretty simple to do. I just typed in clear tape PNG and I found this image right here, and I'm just gonna drag this into my document. You can see it's very subtle, but we have the little bit of tape over our app state logo here, and I can just scale this to the size that I'd like. And that looks pretty good. And so you can see those two things, and I'm just gonna title this tape so I don't lose where this is. Those two things seem pretty easy to do. Let's check back in. So we have our Zach Thomas text, our Davey O'Brien text all done, our trophy done, and our app state tape effect done. And now we just have a few more things. We have this tradition, toughness together signature, and our app state Nike logo. Now, I'm not actually gonna dive into these because these are pretty simple to do. It's as simple as dragging in a logo or dragging in text right there. And that takes a decent amount of time to put together. So for the sake of time, I'm not gonna cover that. But let's go through and just check on all of our layers and see where we are at with this design. So let's turn on our background, our stars, and everything like that. And it's looking pretty good. One more housekeeping thing for this design. It looks like, if I am not mistaken, they have a bit of a grain on top of their image and a little bit of a vignette around the corners. And that's something we've done a lot here on this channel. So I'm gonna check on all of my layers. And we can simply do that by going up to our very top layer, then adding a solid color, setting that to white, just like that. And now we're able to go through and hit Filter, Camera Raw Filter, Convert to Smart Object. And here we have our just white image, just like that. We're able to add in a couple of effects on top, so we can do that by going to Effects. And we can start off by turning up our vignette just a tad. So we want to really bring out those dark corners, just like our original reference image did. So something like that looks pretty good to me. And we can also add in some grain, just like they did on the original image. And you can play around with how much you want / how little you want. But I think for the sake of our design here, I think maybe something in this range looks pretty good to me. I'm gonna hit OK. And we have this overlay just like that. And we can set our blending mode to multiply and even play around with the fill to adjust how dark our image actually gets. And there we have it. That is our app state design, completely recreated from scratch in Adobe Photoshop. I know this video was a little bit long, but if you enjoyed this video and learned something new, make sure you drop a like on this video. And as always, make sure you subscribe if you aren't already. We have tons of awesome videos just like this, walking you through each step in the design process. If you have any comments or things you'd like to see soon, drop a comment down in the comment section. And other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.